Welcome to Planetary Health First, Mars Next. It is going to be an amazing journey today. Hope you are ready for liftoff. We are live now. Welcome to Planetary Health First, Mars Next. We have an amazing special guest here today, David Linthicum. And I don't know how many books he's written, because he's writing one as we speak, and how many LinkedIn. I think I just saw 45,000 some LinkedIn students coming through LinkedIn, and maybe I'm wrong, but David, is so great to have you here. And you're going to be leading us on some discussions on the importance for tech innovation optimization in 2024. If you could just give us a little more about you that would be relevant, that would be great.
Sure. Dave Linthicum, worked for Deloitte. I've been there for about 6 years. I'm this cloud strategy guy. In addition to that, I do a lot of thought leadership stuff, including a lot of podcasts. I have my own podcast called the On Cloud Podcast. About 50, 60 courses on LinkedIn Learning, 17 books, including the one behind me, Insider's Guide to Cloud Computing. I do the InfoWorld blog on cloud computing, as well as a few others. So that's just kind of wallow in the technology in terms of where it's going. So I'm typically where the ball's going to be kicked guy, what the next generation of technology is going to look like, and trying to make educated guesses as to where to place bets.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that good, concise intro. Let's just start it off with the importance for tech innovation optimization in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, we just did a recent study at Deloitte that kind of told me what I already knew. Was the fact that a lot of value that goes to companies and their longevity is going to be completely dependent on their ability to utilize technology effectively. And we've always known aspects of that, but in many instances, I think companies looked at IT as an expense more so than an asset. Certainly during the pandemic, we made some tactical moves to move things in the cloud. We've gone through some digital transformation cycles, things like that. But it really hasn't, gotten to everybody's radar screen that in essence, it's becoming the business. And if you think about it, folks like Airbnb and Netflix and, and Uber and a bunch of those that are just technology companies at the end of the day, really define what their businesses are. And so if you're looking at pharmaceutical, you're looking at manufacturing, you're looking at automobile production, you're looking at all these other things moving forward, their technology is going to be in their customer experience that they provide is how people rate them as a valuable asset to use. And if you think about it, we're always using technology in different ways, and we're going to evaluate our ability to put value on the company and the company's products and services on their ability to leverage technology to take things to the next level, to provide a superior experience, to provide more value than the other providers that are out there. And it's really kind of focusing on that. And I think a lot of enterprises that are missing that mark right now aren't going to be around in 10 years. And a lot of the enterprises that are looking to be disruptors or going to come from nowhere in many instances, provide superior technology. And, very much like, companies like Tesla's done and other companies in the space, start disrupting the space and actually creating a whole new market trend in the area. In their case, EVs, but it can be anything else. It could be the ability to have mass-produced pharmaceuticals, healthcare providers, things like that.
Yeah, with the customer experience and value, how do you see the challenge for companies integrating that design user experience with the hard software engineer? And then also, I guess we're talking cloud and everything, hardware as well. How do you integrate that? That seems to be, a really difficult thing for companies to do and do well.
Yeah, well, they've been at it for about the last 5 years, and the whole digital transformation movement is what that is. And if you look at all the digital transformation information that's out there, they'll draw the customer in the middle and the technology around the end. And in essence, we're focusing on the customer and providing a better experience. So it's just nothing. I don't think people have made the investments that they need to make in it. And so the reality is that many companies have fallen behind in terms of their ability to leverage innovation. We've had recent slowdowns in some industries, not all industries, but they've kind of fallen back on their momentum to move into a new space and create something that's going to be unique and innovative in the space. And at the end of the day, that's how the market's going to evaluate somebody. In other words, if people are putting a value on the market in terms of a market cap, things like that, in many instances, not on the revenue as much. It's on their ability to have assets and innovations that are going to take them to the next level. So the more you're able to do that, the more that the shareholders and the stakeholders in the company and the customers are going to benefit from that. So it's really just kind of following that benefit. But we're kind of at a point right now where it's do or die. So maybe 5 years ago it was kind of adorable. I have a digital transformation strategy. Everybody had one. It was kind of what the cool kids had. Probably had somewhat success in moving it forward, and now here we are in 2023, 2024. It's everything in order for businesses to take off. And the other thing that's occurring right now is the adoption of generative AI. That, in essence, accelerates the last mile problem that we have with digital transformation, the ability to bring an experience or a better product and better service, out to the customers. And so the idea is how you're going to leverage this as a true force multiplier. And so when you look at the executives in the organizations, in many instances, they're probably not asking the right questions. They're probably not driving the right changes moving forward. They're focused on the tactical things, where everything needs to be more strategically focused. And I think the companies that kind of get that and their name brands today are really kind of changing the game. They, in essence, become market makers unto themselves. So the importance of this can't be overemphasized. And I think that many of the players out there are finally seeing the value and starting to make the changes, starting to change the cultures, starting to change the expectations among the employees and the stakeholders in the organization. Some aren't getting it, some are, and those are the ones that are left behind. And by the way, it's going to be brands that have been around for 150 years. They're not necessarily going to go away, but they're going to sink off into oblivion and, kind of get bought and die off and combined with other things. And so we're going to see what I call a brand apocalypse, where a lot of key name brands are going to end up being disrupted and going away because of their inability to leverage technology as a true change agent, which is what it is.
So what's the killing off of older businesses and why? I love that concept. I think you were kind of getting into it a little bit, but if you could unpack that, that would be great.
Yeah, it's the killing off would be people making other choices that don't include that business. And if you think about it, there's always a massive competition that's out there right now in terms of food delivery and ride sharing and even doing rental car markets differently, things like that. If businesses aren't able to figure that out and take advantage of that and participate in that market change, that dynamic in the market, then they're just going to go away, because as people who provide money to those businesses to pay for their services and products, we're going to make other choices. And so you're going to see basically a lot of businesses start being very unprofitable because people are making other decisions in terms of how they're buying products and services. It may be perfectly fine and they may have a good product in the market, but they're unable to get to that next level in providing a unique product or unique customer experience is what people are looking for right now. And we as customers are dealing with different metrics. It's not only the product itself, the quality of the product, but our value, the ability to get value out of that stuff very quickly, but also the ability to deal with a company that's going to respond to us very quickly. Our ability to buy things, service things, implement things, and get advice and technical support around those things. And if companies are kind of thinking at the next level and how we're going to provide that, leveraging technology to provide it, generative AI is an instance of that. So in other words, we're able to go in and actually ask them a question and get not a bunch of articles that have been written 3 years ago on how something's done, but a real interactive experience that's going to be of value to us. We're able to find our problem very quickly and fix our issue. And I think most of the older companies are lacking that. They just don't have the capabilities to make those things scale. They've spent last 20 years outsourcing a lot of that stuff, basically trying to leverage cheaper resources in order to get better with what they think would be better profitability and therefore a better market share. That's not what people are looking for right now. They're looking for companies that are able to invest in their products and services, able to do things a bit better, and always asking the question, is this the best we can do? Are we looking at the technology out there? Is this technology that we're exploiting to take the business to the next level? And if the answer is no, which it is most of the time, then it's creating the culture of innovation, the culture of questioning, the culture of disruption within these organizations, taking the next level. And you look at some of these cultures of the older business, that's always a career killer. So the more you're trying to ask questions and be a dissenting opinion and disruptive and being devil's advocate, things like that, that's normally not going to get you up the promotion mill. However, companies where that is going to be valued is going to get you more promoted. And therefore, the leadership in these organizations are those people who are always asking the questions and ask questions that are, quite frankly, tough to answer. But they're always hungry and taking the business to the next level, never satisfied. So it's not just about making the quarter. It's about creating something that's unique and innovative that no one else has, and the ability to be able to exploit it and take the businesses to the next level. And it doesn't matter if it's healthcare, retail, banking, automobile manufacturing, doesn't matter. Everything kind of comes down to that. And so that lack in the business, which I'm seeing a huge lack out there, is going to find that other businesses are going to go away. The businesses aren't able to exploit that and understand that are just going to go away. And what's most kind of a bummer about that is they probably don't even know why. They just think, why are people other making decisions? Well, the market's fickled. They, the customers just aren't there anymore. The demographic got away, and that's not going to be the case. The case is other people are able to drive success because they're able to work around the problems, able to create something that's going to be better than what you're doing.
Yeah, I think when you've been talking, I've been thinking about industries, and you already said it. As you were talking, you brought up retail, you brought up healthcare, and I just, as a consumer with healthcare, it's so like we don't want to be in a hospital. No one wants to be in a hospital, and we have all this legislative, regulatory nonsense and demonstration, but and Amazon's failed. They're going at it again. They acquired One Medical, which is like a primary care. They've done PillPack to get pharmacy to you. To me, I see that as a huge opportunity. I also see the grocery stores. I really feel for the grocery stores. I see now advertisings for different companies, whether it be HelloFresh, that want to give you what you need at a cheaper price. Whether they really can do that, I doubt it. But when you think about the experience as a customer going to a grocery store, same thing week after week, picking out those. So I don't want to. So anyway, I'm just bringing those two industries up as a consumer. It just seems really frustrating, and it just when I talk to people in healthcare that are at hospitals, I'm just waiting for the right. It's just getting the labs, the interoperable. I mean, it's just such a huge, horrible customer service experience, and then to pay for it, the cost and transparency. But I don't want to hijack that to just one thing, so I'll stop there.
No, healthcare is a primary example of. I mean, why is a big online retailer buying a pharmaceutical? Buying a pharmacy company. Buying a pharmacy company, and that's because they're looking at the ability to disrupt that company and use those products and services to take things to the next level, as well as a grocery store, as well as an automobile manufacturer. And I think that's coming, where we're going to have lots of different ownerships of different kinds of car companies. We're seeing the explosion of EVs right now. Guys like Rivian and other companies that are, coming up and disrupting the space, and then pushing them to get something to the next level. And that their bet is that they're able to take something that's typically going to be an old traditional product and turn it into something that's going to be a lot easier to use and a lot easier to consume. Healthcare is a primary example. I mean, you do not want to be in a hospital. I did that 1 week, in my life, never want to do it again. And it was just, the experience wasn't there. There was no information there. I couldn't get access to doctors and nurses to tell me what was going on. And I remember being delayed, to being released for 3 days because the doctor was on a vacation. And all that kind of stuff goes on. And there's no one asking the question as to how this can be automated in a certain way and make the experience better, so people are able to consume healthcare better. And I think that saves lives. I think many people don't like to go to doctors and hospitals and things like that because they know it's such a negative experience. They know it's very expensive, and they know it's going to have outcomes that are not necessarily positive. So they stay away as much as they can. They're not getting the checkups. They're not getting the blood work done. They're not getting a lot of things that are really applicable to somebody being healthy. Well, the healthcare industry could make that a lot easier. Could make the automation of things a lot easier. The ability to deal with wellness and things like that, and manage services, and the ability to manage high blood pressure and obesity and things like that in much more proactive ways. So we're not just reacting to health events that occur from these chronic diseases, but we're able to manage them through and do so in a way where people are willing to participate, which is, I can't imagine anybody would want to, volunteer to get into any kind of programs, understanding that they're going to be a huge bummer, I think, to deal with. And so they're there to be disrupted. I think during the pandemic, we're consuming health over electronic mechanisms. That was a huge innovation. I never understood why that wasn't an option. Now it became an option because of the pandemic, and we're having different healthcare plans, the ability to consume pharmaceuticals in a different way, be able to deal with doctors in a different way, and the ability to live in a much more healthier way. We just have, we're at stage 2. We need to be at stage 15. And it's going to be another, 20 years before we figure that out, unless some company comes along where maybe they're out of the healthcare realm, but they are a technology company, fill in the blank there. They buy a healthcare company that has a primary services. Maybe it's a hospital system, or it's a pharmacy, and they're able to do things that are game changers in the business, in essence, create the market. And so in other words, the other ones are going to follow because they're able to leverage technology as a true force multiplier. We're able to have better patient experiences, better customer experiences, better ways to deliver pharmaceuticals, all these sorts of things that are ripe for change, just because everything we just mentioned, the deficit of doing that, and then suddenly own the space. And at the same time, everybody has to change and follow them, which is a good thing. So in other words, for them to stay in business. And also we're going to see a lot of healthcare organizations, not picking on those guys, it's all industries that end up falling by the wayside, either have to sell out to a company that's able to take things to the next level, or exit the industry altogether, which is a shame. But in many instances, you can trace those back to self-inflicted wounds. The market didn't go away, it just changed. You failed to adapt to the market, and therefore that's why you're leaving.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a general mindset that we're talking about. It's this hubris, lack of really empathizing, and it's design thinking that just is not. I mean, I think like what I really just with Bezos, with his 1997 shareholder, I mean, it's like his tenants. It's like start with principle thinking. Yes, people want better choice. They want cheaper products, and healthcare needs to start with people don't want to be at the hospital. Should be rule number one. This whole, I mean, it's like a no duh. I mean, I don't have a 5-year-old. I have a 14-year-old, but anyone could tell you that. But they have that to me is design thinking flaw 101. I don't care how many fountains you have. I don't care how many great piano you have in the whatever glass and all the fancy stuff. People don't want to be there. And, to me, I would love to hear universally from all hospital executive leaders that they get it. They don't. So anyway, I'll stop there.
No, I think you're right. And in many instances, they view customers, in this case, patients, as, I wouldn't say the enemy, but as someone that they have to deal with, that they'd rather not deal with. They'd rather, function them out of the equation, even though they have to deliver services to that person in order to get paid by the payer and in order to stay in business. So it is a functional change in culture, the ability to look differently at your customers as someone that can be delighted, and someone where we can take things to the next level. And whether it's healthcare, another one's airline industries have are primed to be disrupted with that kind of stuff. The ability to kind of, and they're far behind in some of the technological changes that have occurred in the last 20 years. They haven't caught up. And the ability to leverage technology to provide a product that's going to bring your business to the next level, but do so with a collective understanding that everybody in the company, from, in the case of the airline business, the person who's working the ramp, to the CEO, have to participate in a culture and be part of a culture that change is good. Change should be adopted. Change should be driven from the grassroots on up, and promoting that culture in these organizations. That's going to take a lot of time and energy to make that happen. In many instances, I don't think it's going to happen for a lot of these older companies that have these innate cultures where change is necessarily pushed back on. They view, they view the market as something that's going to always produce revenue for them, when
Mhm.
that's not always going to happen. And I think we're seeing signs of this now, where these things are starting to occur. And we're seeing some companies change. Maybe 2%, 3% of companies are moving in this direction. Many of them that we know are the brand name technologies you see every day that we know are disruptors and innovators. Most people are pushing back on it. Can't
Mhm.
afford it. Don't think it's going to work. That's the big thing I hear. And I always say, what's going to work? I haven't proposed anything. And then your ability to spend money, invest, and make strategic investments become more efficient than we had in the past, to change things and take things to the next level. And so it becomes kind of a moral courage that has to
Mhm.
occur within these companies. And we did find that at Deloitte as well. We did a study in terms of who's successful with digital transformation and cloud computing, and it blew me away in the fact that everybody was spending about the same amount of money. The ones who were successful had the innovative drivers and disruptors in the organization, are able to create a culture to take things to the next level. So this, thing that I get when I talk to people about, you need to do digital transformation, you need to start modernize your business and modernize your practices and have better customer experiences. And I get told they can't afford it because there's no budget there to make that happen. That's not the case. It's nothing to do with money, everything to do with culture, everything to do with innovation and desire of leaders in the organization to take risks and to drive change, to create things for the better. So it doesn't take money, takes courage, takes the ability to change, and takes your ability to have a certain appetite for risk and a certain appetite for some failure. None of this is going to come without making mistakes. And if that becomes a career-ending event within your company, you're not thinking the right way. You're not creating a culture where people are out there trying to change things.
Are you able to share any sort of specifics, like whether it was? I mean, I know I could imagine it's definitely has to happen at the C-suite, at the executive leadership, and if there's sort of a time horizon, from the start to finish, any sort of details you could get in, a success story that you were really blown away with. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, some from several years ago, where it was a company that did something as simple as manage railways for large railroad industries. And so this was a multi-billion-dollar company, logistical information and things like that. They were able to create a new innovation, a new technology, in this case, drones that operated on railroad tracks, to automate the maintenance and supply and the safety record of these railroads. And so by doing that themselves, they're able to, in essence, create a net new industry. No one thought about doing this in the railroad industry, even though it was ripe for disruption. The ability to have drones that are able to spot and manage track disruptions, the ability to deal with logistics information, the ability to provide more of a logistics management system. This one happened to be in Europe, by the way, where they were able to, in essence, become the darling of their particular industry, very niche, and disrupt their industry and become the standard that everybody leverages on. And therefore, railroad safety went up, and your ability to run these things on time went up. And people enjoyed dealing with the railroads differently because everything ran on time. And by the way, if it didn't run on time, they knew when the stuff was going to get fixed and when your train was going to show up to the minute. That was something
mhm,
that's unheard of.
mhm,
And certainly we can argue, probably can't find aspects of that around here. That's an example of a success. And of course, they were
mhm,
bought by a large railroad conglomerate, but they became the disruptor that created a net new industry in the system. I always think that in the back of my head because they kind of did everything right. They were
mhm,
big organization, but the CEO was a disruptor. He was asking the questions. He only hired people that would have the obligation to descend. I remember him, almost yelling at me the first time I met with him. You're going to have to. He says, if you disagree with me, you disagree with me. Don't ever
mhm,
go along to. And that's something that's a hard thing to do if you're dealing with a
mhm,
client. And
mhm,
I could tell that that culture was going to be successful, because no matter what, he was going to keep trying something until they got something working. And that's what happened, and spent
Mhm.
billions of dollars to get that work running, and therefore was able to create an industry. So apply that in logistics, other logistics, trucking industries, things like that. And those things have
Mhm.
changed the way we're dealing with that. We have autonomous driving right now, autonomous use of railroad equipment, even though people are a little freaked out about that. All that stuff has come into play because I think companies like that existed to start asking the questions. People that would be a failure would be anybody who's trying to get the value of digital transformation, use of cloud to fund their innovation. You're never going to get there. So in other words, the
Mhm.
first thing they say is, we're looking for the savings we're going to get in cloud computing to fund our cloud computing migration. Never going to happen. And to me, I always want to turn around and walk out that door. Sometimes I can,
Mhm.
sometimes I
Mhm.
can't. But they're just going to die the death of a thousand cuts because they're so adamant about keeping things within the budget and not making the investment and not having to go to the board of directors and the investors that say we're off budget, we're going to have to declare a different EPS, earnings per share, that they're just terrified of making any changes. They're not going to be
Mhm.
successful. And
Mhm.
those are never successful. I just kind of watch those things struggle for time and time again, and they just kind of fall back into old habits. Nothing really gets done. In fact, in many instances, they waste money because they kind of take half measures in moving in the cloud and doing half measures in digital transformation, things like that. So they don't get to the end value state. In other words, they just have
Mhm.
projects they end up abandoning, and
Mhm.
they may do so every couple of years, and nothing ever gets done. And that's a good way to deplete resources and have absolutely no ROI that comes back from the value. Unfortunately, those are the majority of the companies I see out there.
Mhm.
They're making different assumptions right now. The generative AI stuff, which really isn't being practiced yet, is
Mhm.
certainly being discussed, has people scared.
Yeah.
So they're really
Well,
scared.
can we let's start with like halfway mark reckoning, kind of getting it out there. So what are the fundamental values of the cloud, generative AI, and modern computing platforms? Because I think this is where the rubber meets the road, David. If you can give us, like, there's so much, whatever you want to call it, BS, hype, like Nvidia, when was it? Like 4 months ago, one day, 30% up in value. I mean, all the chip wars, that book that I haven't read yet, but all these sort of things. Give us the real deal. I mean, what you just help us kind of unpack what the reality is versus hype, and you know.
Yeah, one day we should get on another podcast and talk about books we haven't read yet and just assume what they say. Um, the hype is exceeding the reality of the technology, as always the case. And I saw this with the cloud computing boom, back in 2009, 2008, 2009, where suddenly it became a disruptive technology, and we had companies on the realm that were going to take everything to the next level. At the end of the day, generative AI is good technology that's going to have a value in lots of these organizations. You're able to leverage it. Cloud computing makes generative AI possible because it makes it cheap enough to consume, because I don't have to buy hardware and software and build a data center and lots of cooling and lots of power to push these things. In many instances, I can just make a try-buy where I'm leveraging generative AI as a service out of one of the major cloud providers, or even a cloud provider that may be specifically built to give generative AI. So the value is there. What I see as the major driver in generative AI is not the technology as much itself, but the idea of the technology that's scaring the death out of traditional organizations that think they're about to be disrupted. Suddenly if you go out to, a generative AI system like GPT, excuse me, and you're looking at it and testing it, do fantastic, amazing things. That's what generative AI is able to do. It's able to generate new responses kind of based on massive amounts of data that's able to consume. Well, the application for that, and by the way, AI has been doing that for years. Now we have the ability to use large language models to communicate with these systems in more humanistic ways and leveraging them much more productive ways from the prompts. And so we have value within those systems, but not necessarily in every application. It will have value in terms of our ability to run a logistics operation, because it can generate net new routes based on existing routes and existing understanding of weather and all these other patterns that come into play. So it's able to make very complex decisions, and therefore may add some value in those particular instances. And lots of the ways that people are looking to apply it probably won't add as much value. It's kind of cool. And certainly you can say our product is powered by Gen AI. But it's going to be missing the mark in terms of its ability to provide value back to the business. The other thing is it costs a lot of money to run. So in other words, it takes a lot of processing power, a lot of storage. Those things take a lot of power to cool. So the concern would be that the resource consumption would go way up, not for the value benefit that comes back. So what businesses need to do right now is to understand what that technology is capable of doing and what that technology is not capable of doing, and figure out the right use cases and how to leverage it. The big concern that I'm seeing right now is people kind of take the opposite. They make a mass movement into generative AI, trying to push every system that they have onto this technology, very much like they did with cloud back in 2009, 2010, 2011. And in many instances, it was misapplied. In fact, we have this notion of repatriation right now in the cloud field, where people are pulling things back to a private data center because something was moved to the cloud in many instances during the pandemic and should never have been moved to the cloud. It was just uneconomically viable to run in the cloud. Well, the same thing with generative AI. So it's going to have some usefulness, and it's going to have some disruptive nature in the fact that we're able to leverage this technology in a faster, better way to leverage it for particular tactical uses. But as far as it strategically changing the way in which we do business, that's probably not going to happen, at least for a long time. So we're going to find some uses of it. The big problem now is I see it being applied everywhere. I hear it in meetings all the time as everything that's going to be a candidate solution for whatever the problem is.
Generative AI.
Yeah, it's not a transaction oriented. It's not good for transaction oriented system. It's good for when we have to process lots of information and make a conclusion. We did that using logical operators, in the past, and we just do so using generative AI now, where the large language models are easier to communicate, should be cheaper to deploy those things. But it's going to have an application in about 1 in 10 use cases, not every use case. And that's the big fear I have right now. People end up spending more money and more time and chasing the hype that is generative AI. I call it managing by magazine. Everybody seems to be chasing after this stuff, and they're going to end up implementing it for the wrong reasons in the wrong sectors and not find the value. Companies out there that will be winning the game are people who understand what the value of this stuff is, and they're looking to study it, understand it. They're doing POCs right now, which I love to see, because people are experimenting with the technology versus trying to put it into production and have something fail. And they're able to find niches and opportunities to apply it, and something that's going to be driving some sort of a net new innovation. So in other words, a generative AI system is able to go into a particular niche application, which is able to drive something that provides a better customer experience, better product support. Something has a viable ROI in the business. It's not around a sales transaction oriented system. I understand it's cool to have somebody who can, go into LinkedIn Learning and, bring up all the interactions to figure out where this person went to school and that kind of stuff. That's all well and good, but it doesn't necessarily get to core value drivers and why we're building it. Core to here is, in other words, I would always ask the question, how can this technology be applied so it's going to have a better customer experience? How is this technology going to be applied so I have a better product and service? How is this technology going to be applied where I can track the value that comes back from the business pretty easily? So it's not, automating the sales order entry process. That doesn't have a lot of value, even though it's kind of cool. We're using Gen AI to do that. It's expensive, and it's not necessarily going to add a lot of value. However, in the ability to provide technical support, and in such a way where they don't know they're dealing with the generative AI engine. In other words, they're dealing with something that's going to be very productive for them to get to the questions answered as quickly as they want to answer, more so than dealing with a human, then that's going to have value. And people are going to choose to deal with us versus the other players there, because we're able to leverage this technology as a true force multiplier to do something better than some of the other systems that are out there. The ability to leverage generative AI systems to have more safety systems involved. Applicable in automobiles, the ability to have massive amounts of accident data, coordination to figure out what patterns are occurring now that may lead to a percentage of risk that I'm going to crash the car because I'm, too tired or something like that. Or the ability to have monitoring systems where we're in these watches, might be able to use the data for some good purpose, where it's able to look at massive amounts of training data and figure out, based on my blood pressure and my oxygen saturation, my beats per minute, exercise routine, my weight, everything this thing knows, what is the likelihood that I'm heading to some sort of a medical event, and how can that be avoided? And I always think we're not doing that enough because we just don't have the applicability of this various technology to make it happen. Some of it's occurring, but not as much as that can be occurring in those systems. So it's applying it in ways that are going to drive innovative, net new changes that are going to provide more value back to the customers, who are the people that are paying the bill. And the more value you're able to bring back to the customers, the more money that's going to come to your business. And I think that that's really kind of the nut to crack. Right now, I think we have a tendency to deal with technology like kids play soccer. There's no rhyme or reason or strategy. Balls kicked over there, that's where they run. Balls kicked over there, that's where they run. Everybody's running towards Gen AI right now. Like everybody ran to cloud computing. Some people ran to edge computing, all these sorts of things. It's just not going to have the value that many people are seeking unless they take a strategic look at what this technology does and doesn't do.
You sound like you said soccer. I'm almost thinking pinball. Pinball. You said about the POC. When I'm hearing just what you were sharing, it seems like there needs to be now more investment in generative AI research, the design and strategy to understand, not like an Elon Musk, like we got to stop it because we don't want the singularity robot killing all of us and destroying us, and then just going to Mars, right? And just laughing, right? Having a fun time thinking they got the humans. But really, how are we going to figure this out? More like almost anthropologists, like more human-centric design, but I just don't see enough organization. Are there organizations going through that, or am I doing an overkill? But I'm just unpacking what you shared because it's very complicated. And you said about 1 out of 10 user case scenarios actually are worthwhile. So how do you scratch off those 9 or figure out those 10 and get to that to me is fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And guys like me are doing that right now. And we're doing some of that at Deloitte because obviously we're a consulting firm and therefore we make money on people implementing solutions that bring to bear value. And so therefore we want to make sure we're implementing the right values. But you have a lot of pundits in the industry that are kind of going through this right now and mentioning things. I'm certainly one of them. They're just not getting the attention that I think they need. So I see a few posts and things like that are very intelligent with when it should be used and not be used, what value propositions it can have, what kind of use cases should be, and basically starting the research as to what are the value metrics we need to use for this technology, which is the same stuff we use for cloud computing and edge computing and even machine learning and some of the early instances of AI that were predecessors to Gen AI. You got to remember, AI has been around since the 50s. And they just don't have a tendency to get the attention and the push in the market that I think they should. Obviously, I think I should have a more of an impact in the market and more people should listen to me. But the reality is you're competing with $30 billion of marketing dollars, best I can tell. So how do you do that? Writing a white paper here and an article there and, podcast here and that kind of stuff to get above that noise when it's within the best interest for the cloud companies, the technology companies, even some of the consulting companies out there, promote this technology as something that's a cure-all for everything so they can drive this market and enter their market and get their position in the market as quickly as they can. And I think that's where mistakes are made. If you look at the early days of cloud, that's a prime example. Everybody was told by the cloud providers and even some of the cloud pundits that are out there, move in the cloud as quickly as you can, have a cloud-only strategy. I think even the government adopted it. And everybody just kind of made a mass move to the cloud without understanding why that was occurring. There was no why ever answer. There's just what we're doing and getting in the cloud as quickly as possible. And we ended up wasting a lot of money. And then we saw in 2022, we did a lot of research and surveys. People primarily lost money in their cloud purchases. They thought they would save money moving everything into the cloud. Best I can tell, and I cite this in my book, is probably 2.5 times as much as they thought the they thought the cost was going to be to live in the cloud versus even more traditional systems and on-premise. So there was no value there in many instances. And that's not because cloud can't have value and not because it's not a force multiplier. It certainly is. In many instances, it's the only alternative we have. It's because no one asked the question as to what was the correct use and proper use of this technology and when it should be leveraged. And also the fact that it's never going to be a mass movement to any single platform. It's going to be a diversification of platforms that are going to be right and more optimal for different workloads and different data sets that are out there. It's not always going to be the cloud. It's not always going to be the edge. It's not always going to be our on-premise. Not always going to be in a data center. It's going to be a ubiquitous computing environment where all these things are running on the platforms where they're able to return the most value. That's cloud computing. Well, same thing with generative AI. In other words, what are the applications and use cases that are able to return the most value? And are we spending enough time asking ourselves why, how these things need to occur? And then what are the value metrics in terms of it returning value back to the business, providing a better quality service, customer experience, things like that. And if that we're unable to get to that and understand that, we're just going to end up making a bunch of other mistakes. And it's always going to get to a point, and this drives me nuts. People say, well, Dave, it works. Our generative AI system is running fine and everything's working fine. And everybody seems to like it. That doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. That just means that you got something functionally working and operating, but the value that is coming back to the business may be minimal or non-existent or even negative. And a lot of those things really just aren't understood. And it's difficult, it's hard to be the designated buzzkill out there, but in many instances, kind of that's what we need. You get the old dissenting opinion that occurs. And so the CEOs that are listening to people who are saying, why are we doing this? Doesn't mean anything against generative AI. It just means that we're looking for technology that's able to provide the most value to the business. That's the journey. And I get people all the time when I mention this. This is about it depends, and what the people hate that question answer from consultants, but that's true. And then someone will come away, well, Linthicum, he's down on generative AI. Absolutely not the case. From any technology is going to be fine. What I'm down on is mismatching the problems we're trying to solve with solutions and running after stuff where everything looks like a nail if we have a hammer, and we can't survive that way. That's just going to be another round of failures that are going to kill many businesses.
It just seems like, I hate to say it, what you're sharing is almost like a microcosm of the macrocosm. And right now we have this, I don't know if you've ever heard of this venture capitalist gentleman who wrote a manifesto, right? 5,000 page recently, basically ode to AI and all that we can make on AI, and that it's just so optimistic that I'll say positivity, manifesto, technology, whatever. But it's like, are we kidding? There is some serious stuff going on. Granted, I hate to say it, but the people you talked about it, $30 billion in investment, aren't like, we're talking advertising. Yeah, marketing alone, and just buy our system, buy our Google, whatever those big 3 or 4 names, and these big venture capital firms, which I'm not mentioning any of the names, I just accidentally did one, but it seems like it's all about and so it's that land grab, and history repeats itself. So for you to be the expert in the middle to your clients, like doing the right thing, I could only imagine in the end they have to use it, right? Once you've bought this Ferrari or whatever, so anyway, it just seems like there's not enough nuance, there's not enough discussion. There's either like you're for AI, it's the greatest thing, or you're then a regulator, and then it's like no one, politicians, granted, they've earned their right that no one trusts them either, but then you're like Elon Musk that thinks we need to stop it. And so there's really no, I feel like what I'm hearing from you is a sensible, logical, real conversation, but it's drowned out by $30 billion. So I'll just stop there. I'm on my little rant.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's happened many times in my career. I mean, I'll be 62 next year, and, I've been in this business a long time, and written for PC magazines, and, PC Magazine and all the big, public, been out there as a thought leader in the space. And it's something that people don't want to hear. Whatever technology is coming up is going to be the next destination for most of the systems out there, and not taking away the value of the technology, but just understanding that we need to focus this and not having the ready, fire, aim kind of thing that's going on out there. It just can't scale. And so we're to the original point we just made at the beginning of the conversation, we're getting to a point where not only that is going to be needed, generally speaking, but if you don't do that, you're going to end up failing and falling out of the business. If people are putting more emphasis on the technology innovation, you're able to leverage your ability to apply the resources in certain strategic ways to get the most innovative value out of your investments is going to be critical to your survival. That's not just optional something, if we didn't get right 10 years ago, the business still kind of lived on as long as they were building cars or building tires or whatever they did. That's not going to be the case anymore. And I think that it's going to normalize the system and have a lot of these businesses go away. That may be a good thing because we're getting people out of the market that are, quite frankly, making huge mistakes and dumb moves. I say dumb moves. They're not looking at the technology as the strategic benefit that is able to leverage and not understanding as well as they should. But it's just coming up pretty quick. And you and I will having maybe talking on this podcast in 3 or 4 years and saying, look back and say, I told you so. This is what we're going through right now. But I don't want to tell people I told you so. I just want people to look at the stuff with an intelligent eye. Look at the value you're about to spend a lot of money and stuff that's going to change your business. You're putting resources in this place. I understand why you're doing it, because you're scared. You're afraid your other competitors are going to come up and do something and build something better. That's not going to be the case as long as you apply it in the right problems.
So if you were talking to a CEO, let's just say of an enterprise technology company, I mean, maybe I guess it could be any technology company. It's got to be a large enough company with you to do consulting on this. Let's just say it's a significant company. What would that conversation, it sounds like the first thing has to be is a conversation to get that buy-in that you're the right fit, to otherwise, I mean, how does that look? Can you walk me through that? Because in the end, it seems like both parties are going to be unhappy. And it sounds like one of the most important things is the company has to have some level of customer delight or really providing value. Not that all companies, I mean, of course, in order to be successful, they have to have, so I guess what I'm thinking, you probably have your own process like that. Obviously, when you're in work, not all clients are your best friends. There's not always the easiest clients. Work is hard. I'm not trying to say it's all lollipops and sunshine, but just, I imagine you try to have those conversations up front in the beginning. What does that look like?
That just being very open and honest, having the role of a trusted advisor and, kind of operating like a doctor or a lawyer as someone that's looking out for the benefits of the client, not a particular industry. So it is having those tough discussions where, I understand why you're moving in this direction, but you may be missing some marks. We may be doing some things that are going to lead down to a negative outcome for the things that are going forward, and have a discussion around that. In many instances, you're eliminated from the process. If we have that opinion, then they may not want to engage us anymore because it's dissenting. And last thing they want to do is have smart guys in the room that are disagreeing with them in front of their compadres. So it may get you out of the business. And so in many instances, consultants have to have this ethical drive, and anybody who's in the business who's providing this stuff. Is it more important to maintain the client and the revenue, or is it more important to provide them with the right answer? And I always view it's more important to provide them with the right answer and let the chips fall where they may. If they don't want to engage me, they don't want to engage me. But chances are they're heading for a failure anyway. We saw this in cloud a bunch of times. So I don't want to be on that train when that wreck occurs. And I've had many instances, not lately, but years ago, when I ran my own consulting firm and worked for a startup consulting firm, things like that, where we would just leave those things alone. And then a year later, we just got back in there because they made huge screw ups and cost them lots of money. And we were in there fixing things. So that's always going to be the case, but it's always ethically better for everybody to tell the truth. I think I tried lying once. It never works out. No matter what business or deficit it's going to have to you personally. But I think you come out to different benefits in doing that, and certainly benefits to your soul. So your ability at the end of the day saying, well, I told them the right thing. Sorry, it didn't work out for me.
Yeah. Well, Dave, this has been awesome. It's really been great to have you on, and I hope we can do it again. And I feel like these conversations are evergreen and also evolving at the same time. And there's so many things that touch technology, generative AI, and the applications. I have a lot of different interests of mine, from here on Earth to healthcare, technology, and then also space. I don't know why. I guess, slight interest in Mars for some reason. Will we get there? I do think we're going to have nuclear jet propulsion if we really are serious. So I think that will be an interesting thing, and that's coming back as well. We have efforts, not me and my organization, but NASA and DARPA, that's a whole nother thing. But that needs computing, and that needs AI and generative AI and cloud and all those sort of things, communication, satellites, all those sort of things. So anyway, that was a mouthful. But before we kind of do our send off until next time, is there anything you would like to unpack or share more about yourself? This is your time. To Dave. Go ahead, send it out.
Try to find a balance in your life. Don't work too much. Don't play too much. Figure out some kind of happy medium, because it's the best way to proceed. And many people don't get that right.
And I will attest that he is totally spot on with that. I got to meet him prior to this, and he was in his biking outfit. He doesn't wear that just for fun, other than
mountain biking.
Mountain biking. So you are a big mountain biker, which is super cool. I've tried it a little bit, but people that do it love it. And so anyway, that's awesome. I'm going to send us away. Give me 1 second. And I'm really glad that we could have you today in the studio, and we're going to do it again. Friends, it has been a great journey today on Planetary Health First, Mars Next. Follow us for more on Planetary Health First, Mars Next. Until next time, peace be with you.